Hi everyone, welcome back to Ask Ornstein. It's a really important episode, it's long overdue, and it's on Juventus. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by our Serie correspondent, James Horncastle. James, buongiorno. Grazie for joining us. Ciao. That's about the extent of my Italian. It's not the extent of yours, nor your Italian football knowledge. And we're going to get stuck into it straight away. But what I'd like to start with is you providing quite a concise overview for all of our audiences on the state of play at Juventus right now.
Well, it feels like it's going to be a pivotal end of season at Juventus. They've got a lot of decisions to make. Andrea Pirlo, I think, is under examination at the moment. They lost to Benevento at the weekend. They're 10 points off the top in Serie A, which means they look like they're not going to win the league title for the first time in 9 years. And given that retaining the Scudetto wasn't enough for Allegri to keep his job or Maurizio Sarri to keep his job, what does that mean for Andrea Pirlo? You've then got the future of the chief football officer, Fabio Paratici, whose contract is up at the end of the year. Paratici's been there for 11 years, joined when Agnelli became president, has been integral to their success. He was promoted on the back of the signing of Cristiano Ronaldo, but his contract so far has not been extended. So who will be calling the shots in the transfer market for Juventus in the summer? And then you've got the Ronaldo and Dybala situation. Both of their contracts are up at the end of next season, so June 2022. And if you have to pick one, who do you pick? That's one of the big questions facing the Juventus president, Andrea Agnelli, going into the end of the season.
Now, The Athletic is currently running a fantastic price for new subscribers of less than £1 or $1 per week for the first 6 months. That's 40% off an annual subscription. Just head to theathletic.com/Ask Ornstein. That's theathletic.com/Ask Ornstein. Before we get back to chatting with James, a question for you. If Juventus can only keep one of these players, who should it be? Ronaldo or Dybala? Let me know in the comments below. Well, I'm going to take your last point first and begin with Cristiano Ronaldo, because you wrote a piece on him earlier this month. He's been the talk of so many football fans. I'm taking nothing away from Cristiano's impact, his mercurial status, one of the greatest players of all time, I think we would say. However, the fact remains that Juventus have actually regressed somewhat while he's been at the club. So that is a very expensive issue to be resolved in the coming times.
It is. It's counterintuitive, really, that signing one of the best players in the world has led to a regression at the club. I don't think you can pin that entirely on Cristiano. No. But in terms of his statistics since he's been at Juventus, certainly in the league, he's been fantastic. And I think if you ask Juventus fans, have they enjoyed watching him? Of course they have. I think they see it as an absolute privilege that he's on the team. I think the league thinks it's a privilege that he's in the league as well. But Cristiano wasn't signed to win the league for Juventus. They had done that every year for the previous 7 years. He was signed to deliver the Champions League. And that hasn't happened. They went out in the quarterfinals to Ajax in Allegri's final year, Lyon in the round of 16 in Sarri's only year, and they've gone out again this time to Porto. So in each of those cases, favourable draws where you'd expect Juventus to reach the quarterfinals, and it hasn't happened.
Can you tell us what you think will happen with him? My information is that he's so expensive that the likes of Manchester United and Real Madrid, who have been linked with him, are not in a position to buy him. There's his salary, a transfer fee. I think it's around 28 million that's remaining on his book value. And then you'd have 30 million net, roughly, salary request on top of that. And all of the tax benefits that he gains in Italy, potentially being lost if he leaves for more than one season, which of course you'd expect if he was to join another club. So that's a massive conundrum. He could, of course, leave as a free agent in the following summer, as you pointed out. And George Mendes, I'm sure, will get him a fantastic deal if that's the case, but it wouldn't be ideal for Juventus. So what do you actually think is going to happen? Is he going to be staying at Juventus?
I think Cristiano has kind of hinted in his very brief kind of media appearances so far, it's usually on social media, that he might see out the remainder of that contract. I think the issue for Juventus is how sustainable that is. For all the uplift that Cristiano has brought commercially to the club, they've been able to renegotiate the sponsorship deal with Adidas on their shirt sponsor as well, the naming rights of the stadium. They've been able to charge higher ticket prices, but of course, no one's buying tickets at the moment. The cost that he is on the books means that if they are to keep him, they have to do this scramble every summer of, well, who can we sell? Is it Dybala? Is it Cancelo as it was in the past? Is it Moise Kean? All these kind of players that they maybe would not necessarily consider selling before, they've had to do that in order to retain Cristiano.
James, that leads us very nicely onto the subject of recruitment, and I'll bring in some of our subscriber questions. One comes from Simone, who asks, do you think there's a correlation between Marotta's departure and the trend of bad signings from Juventus, such as Rabiot and Ramsey? They were in the mould of the previous strategy, but failed to live up to their wage. And then we have quite a few better recent signings, I would point out. The likes of McKennie and Chiesa has done very well too. So tell us more about Juventus's recruitment. And I guess within that, you can cover the future of Paratici.
I think, as you mentioned, this last summer was a real return to form for Paratici in many respects, with McKennie, Chiesa, Kulusevski, even De Ligt last year. I mean, let's not forget that after the summer after signing Ronaldo, they signed De Ligt. But I suppose, exactly. So I suppose one of the issues that they have had is that, the pressure that having Ronaldo on the wage bill means is that they've often had to make financial decisions first in the transfer market rather than football decisions. So, for example, when it comes to Cancelo, Cancelo was as good at Juventus and Inter as he has been at City this season. And they sold him for a profit just a year after signing him, because ultimately Dybala dug in his heels, didn't want to go to Manchester United, didn't want to go to Spurs. They loaned Higuain, who was their highest earner prior to Ronaldo, to AC Milan, didn't work out. Loaned him to Chelsea, where Serie was, didn't work out. They then appoint Serie, and all of a sudden Higuain wants to come back and work under Serie. So they couldn't sell him. So they have to sell Cancelo, and they have to sell Moise Kean as well. And they haven't really replaced Kean in the meantime. They haven't got a striker to help back up the likes of Ronaldo, the likes of Morata. And you've got all these different pressures. You think of, recent Champions League squads, leaving Mandzukic out, Khedira out, Emre Can out. That doesn't lead itself to a healthy kind of squad dynamic. There are long faces there. So all of these things, I would say, have made the situation that little bit more pressured at Juventus, along with the expectation, of course, that comes when you have Cristiano and everyone. I was there when they signed him in Turin when he landed, and the only chant that their fans were singing was, "Bring us the champions, bring us the Champions League." So far, they're still waiting for it.
James, I find this absolutely fascinating, and I want to hone in on a few areas. You mentioned there the wage bill. That wage bill includes the significant outlay for Paulo Dybala. I think he's on reportedly around 8 million net. He wants around 10 million to stay when his contract expires. Many feel he should be the face of the team going forward. He's much younger than Ronaldo, of course, around a decade younger than him. However, he has had a disastrous time, really, through illness, COVID, and injury too. Suddenly, the summer before last, and the links to Manchester United and Tottenham, they might not be there for that level of club right now. What happens with him?
Yeah, Dybala, I think, should be the face of the team going forward. He's the number 10. He was supposed to be the guy who led Juventus after Higuain. Instead, that ended up being Cristiano Ronaldo. But, with his contract running down, he is one of the players that they can make a very, very big profit on. And I think, that will be a consideration in the summer. I mean, Juventus always say, no one is for sale unless the player comes to us and says they want to leave. But in reality, I think, clubs come to them, they will be aware that that Dybala is someone that Juventus can make a big profit on. And I think no one is unsellable at Juventus. I think that's always been the case. The club has always been run as a business.
you say nobody's unsellable at Juventus, and coming under that category, I'm sure would be Aaron Ramsey. Now, many of our audience are Premier League fans and would like to know if he might be coming back to the Premier League or indeed moving elsewhere. But there are ongoing suggestions that Juventus are very keen to move Aaron Ramsey on, that it's not been the success that they hoped. And of course, with McKennie coming in, Ramsey seems to have had his game time even further limited.
I think with Ramsey, he has felt that he's never been able to play in his preferred position at Juventus. He sees himself as a box-to-box midfield player. I think Maurizio Sarri played him in a very kind of restricted role, very rigid tactically, often as a number 10. I think Ramsey this year has actually enjoyed his football more, playing in this kind of hybrid role where he has to play on the wing when they don't have the ball, and he has to play as a 10 when they do have it. And he's played that role well, when he's been called upon to do it with McKennie. He likes Pirlo, Pirlo likes him. But as you say, that wage bill that they have is, and his wage as well as Rabiot's, is something that I think will always lead them to consider the options that come to them for him. But the problem is, can someone match that wage or get close to it, even in the Premier League? And I think that's one of the issues that Juventus have had in recent years. I mean, David, you look at some of the players that they've actually had to come to contract resolutions with to get them off the books. I mean, Higuain, for example, Khedira, Mandzukic, all these players, just to basically give the wage bill some room to breathe.
Or even swap in terms of Artur and the Barcelona deal. Piano.
Exactly. So you often have these kind of almost cash neutral swaps. So they've had to get very creative in the transfer window in the last few years.
Andrea Pirlo is subject to a lot of speculation at the moment. At the top of this program, you mentioned that other coaches have been sacked for better seasons than he's had. But on the flip side, the club have stated publicly, although they have made public utterances like this in the past, that Pirlo is part of this sort of, I don't know if they want to call it a rebuilding job, but I think we can. It's the next phase that they're going into. But truthfully, do you think he will be the man to see it through?
I think unless things dramatically improve, it's going to be difficult because, David, we're not just talking about Juventus missing out on the league for the first time in 9 years to a team that's coached by the guy who put them back on the top of Serie A, Antonio Conte, whose recruitment is being led by the guy who put them back on the top of Serie A in Giuseppe Marotta. It's the fact that they're 10 points off the top, and the Champions League race.
Sarri's breathing down their neck as well.
Well, Sarri's also still on Juventus's books. They're paying two coaches at the moment, so that's a pressure. But they're 10 points off the top, and they're at risk of maybe not even qualifying for the Champions League if things don't dramatically improve. And I think at that point it becomes critical. I mean, Agnelli has never changed manager in season. The last time that happened was under his predecessors, Giovanni Cobolli-Gili and Jean-Claude Blanc, when Ciro Ferrara had to go. So I think they would be reluctant to make that. Change. But obviously, if the Champions League qualifying for it becomes is in jeopardy, then they might have to look at that. Particularly when one of Andrea Pirlo's assistants, Igor Tudor, has first-team head coaching experience at Udinese and Galatasaray and things like that. So, I mean, there are lots of very good coaches on the market. Allegri, for example. I mean, Allegri, it's been a surprise. I don't know if it's been a surprise to you, David, but Paris Saint-Germain job came up. He didn't get it. Chelsea job came up. He didn't get it. That was a surprise to me, given the job he did, which you're now seeing in hindsight was actually incredibly good at Juventus in reaching Champions League finals twice in 4 years, coming close to doing the treble in each of those seasons as well. But I think we'll have to see in terms of the manager, because I don't think missing out on the Champions League would be acceptable. for Juventus, particularly for all the things we've spoken about, David, regarding, for example, the sustainability of having someone like Cristiano Ronaldo on their books. Would Cristiano want to even see out a final season not being in the competition that he says is the only, if he had to choose, he would only play Champions League football? So I think that's a major consideration.
Thanks for watching, guys. Head over to The Athletic for much more Italian football coverage. Plus, you can hear James every week on the Totally Football Show European Edition and the Galazzo podcast. Also, make sure you check out On the Plane, our brand new weekly feature discussing the biggest Euro 2020 talking points ahead of the summer. The first edition of that is now live on this channel.